Let's talk about the WWE AAA relationship. There's been some updates on this. There was a report this week through reporting from the Spanish language publication Lex Latin. The percentage of WWE's controlling interest in AAA has been revealed. WWE, now owned by TKO, will own 51% of AAA when the transaction completes, which is not expected until the third quarter of 2025, with Mexican sports and entertainment company Philip owning the remaining 49%. The total amount of the sale has yet to be revealed. The report also indicates that the deal had a strong intellectual property component, as the main value of the acquired company is its intangible assets, including trademarks, copyrights, and exclusive use rights, among others. Because of this, the transaction required an audit of these assets to verify their specific characteristics, validity, and legal status, as well as a review of the licenses and other contracts entered into regarding them. Several of the seller's IP assets were subject to litigation, necessitating an analysis of potential liabilities and risks arising from the litigation. So basically, standard legal procedure. And if there were any sort of legal discrepancies or conflicts over wrestler names and things of that nature, then obviously the company is going to want to do its due diligence and make sure that that's either taken care of or it's taken care of before the deal closes. Now, on Monday, Ernesto Ocampo, the editor of Super Luchas, reported that Alberto Del Rio, who is the current AAA Mega champion, and the following AAA talents have signed contracts with WWE: Hijo de Dr. Wagner, Hijo del Vikingo, La Parca, the new one, because they have a new La Parca now, who apparently is very good, La Hiedra, Lady Flammer, Lady Maravilla, and Nino Hamburguesa. According to Mr. Ocampo here, have all signed contracts with WWE. But then there was an update from Lucha Blog on Twitter that said WWE didn't, quote, give Alberto Del Rio a contract. In actuality, WWE is likely assuming responsibility for the contract that Del Rio signed with AAA last year. They also noted that Ocampo will likely know more details about the contract statuses, but the situation was evolving since it was first announced last month. Additionally, Ocampo posted another update and said that the AAA wrestlers will be on the roster that will compete in Mexico. However, a few of them, like Vikingo, could possibly appear on joint events with NXT in the United States. Dave Meltzer later reported that Del Rio did sign a new contract with WWE, but he does not expect him to appear on WWE television, and he will be used exclusively on AAA events. So, for example, this Worlds Collide show that's coming up in LA on June 7th, I would not expect Alberto Del Rio to be on that show. Or at least that's the belief right now. Because people were freaking out about this. Now, let me get into some more here, because this is from Meltzer in The Observer this week. Nobody from AAA or WWE has commented on the report or responded to inquiries. One other person in the Mexican media backed the story. One person very close to some of the talent has disputed the entire story, particularly as it involves WWE signing contracts with anybody. One person with knowledge from WWE stated that they had never seen that list of wrestlers and said it was probably a legal formality on the AAA end. The Ocampo story was that they want to avoid what happened with Forbidden Door, where Stephanie Vicaire looked impressive in a match with Mercedes Moné, and they were legally able to sign her right away and not have to work in reverse, or have that work in reverse. Ocampo said that some may appear on NXT similar to TNA talent, but he thought it would only be a few people. He said many fans, especially in the US, are assuming that by buying AAA, WWE is also acquiring the contracts. But aside from the fact that the sale has not even been finalized, those contracts are of no use to WWE because WWE contracts are legally distinct and include multiple provisions and clauses such as exclusivity, intellectual property rights, and termination conditions that AAA's contracts do not address or enforce. That's why new contracts are replacing the existing ones. The AAA contracts are a joke. Any lawyer could invalidate them. WWE is offering contracts backed by TKO and including many clauses that AAA's do not account for. The idea is to sign only around 10 or 12 wrestlers from the current AAA roster. I don't know that the current AAA roster has that many more than that. Frankly, I don't think their talent roster is that big. But he also wrote that those on the list have already signed, and there are other contracts with AAA talent that are pending, along with contracts of talent they hope to bring over from CMLL. Others in Mexico said CMLL is fine with the WWE purchase of AAA because it leaves them as the only national promotion that will be doing Lucha Libre as it was done. AAA did Lucha Libre, but mixed in with hardcore wrestling and 1990s and 2000s American booking, such as heel authority figures and groups with the idea of taking from ECW and the NWO era in WCW. He said that for a few months there have been plans by CMLL to upgrade the booking and modernize the television production to compete with AAA, but this feeling has changed with the acquisition, thinking that AAA will not be viewed as authentic Mexican wrestling. That led to their new slogan that as long as Arena Mexico exists, Lucha Libre will never die. He said they are very excited about that slogan. Because CMLL is so entrenched culturally in being the oldest wrestling company in the world, there is the feeling that they will always exist. But in the U.S., many companies entrenched locally for decades still went by the wayside when WWE took over. Ocampo said CMLL also told the wrestlers that there will not be any changes in the booking approach or in their contracts. This announcement should have triggered immediate action to draft new deals, contracts that would have locked the talent in with better pay and clearly outlined dates with New Japan, Rev Pro, and AEW. But that's not going to happen. Incredibly, that's not going to happen. They're leaving themselves completely exposed to whatever WWE intends to do. The belief is that the June 18th AEW show at Arena Mexico will be like Forbidden Door in the sense that WWE will be watching, and the CMLL talent appearing on that show will be seen, and like with Stephanie, there will be an attempt to sign those that look impressive in their eyes. The Alberto name, and to a lesser extent the, I don't know if it's Hiedra or Hiedra, I'm going to say Hiedra name, on the list raised some flags, and clearly the Alberto name caused negative social media and a favorable post on Lucha Libre Online, which is a website run by Alberto's good friend Hugo Savinovich, that would indicate the response has raised questions. This is what Hugo said about his boy. Alberto Del Rio has no convictions against him. Alberto Del Rio committed no crime. The U.S. judicial system, one of the strongest in the world, found no crimes against him. Alberto Del Rio is drug-free. Alberto Del Rio only lives to take care of his children after the mother of his children left this earthly universe. There are no convictions. He came away free from everything. He matured. He reinvented himself. He's in respectable physical shape. He has a solid resume. He really wants to contribute to the growth of Mexican wrestling. He has filled arena after arena as the face of AAA. All the talents who have worked with him feel safe, and so does the production team. At the end of the day, he's an innocent man. We're not saying it. The U.S. judicial system says it. Stop the media war against him once and for all. This is the only individual who did a media tour with all the press and answered each and every question asked, no matter how uncomfortable they were. Everyone deserves a second chance. Let him bring bread to the table for his children who only have him in their lives. So Alberto Del Rio has spent many years working in different promotions, right? WWE, he spent many years there. He had a run there for a while in TNA many years ago after he left WWE or was let go by WWE. He was in Lucha Underground, right? In AAA. And right now he's the AAA Mega Heavyweight Champion. He's basically the top star in the entire company. And there was a period of time many years ago where it felt like on a pretty regular basis, there was always something going on, some kind of conflict or fight that he was getting involved in. He was fighting people, or there were more personal things involving some relationships that he was in. The most high-profile one of them all, of course, was the relationship that he had with Saraya, right, the former Paige in WWE. And they were engaged at one point. And then there was another story after that relationship ended involving, I don't know if it was an ex-girlfriend. It might have been another ex-fiance. And this goes back about 5 years. And that was more serious in that he was charged with aggravated kidnapping and sexual assault. And I covered it at the time on the podcast. There was a police report. It was very, very bad. And the charges ultimately got dropped when the accuser would not cooperate with the case and basically disappeared. And the family, Alberto's family and friends, claimed that she recanted her story. And so from there, his career continued on, and he became a top heel in AAA, and they basically built the company around him, and he won the Mega title from Nick Nemeth last summer. Now, the stuff with Saraya was bad enough, and she's talked about how he would trap her in a room for 6 or 7 hours at a time, and she would get her ass beat every couple of minutes by him. He was doing all these crazy things to her. Whatever you think of how toxic that relationship was, this was years later, after they broke up, when she started speaking up about this, because she didn't want to be shamed on social media. Right, or not shamed any more than she was probably already being shamed on social media for various things. And she really didn't want to be labeled as a victim, so she kept quiet about it. But then his name ended up back in the news, I think, for this other story, and she was probably asked questions about him, and so she was all of a sudden being very public and describing the different things that he did to her. It was not an amicable split, let's put it that way. Okay, so that's bad enough when you hear her talk about what he was doing to her when they were in a relationship together. But then you get that case with his former fiance, which was also very, very disturbing. And in case you forgot that story, you've never heard it before, I'll just pull here from this story. Del Rio was arrested in May of 2020 in San Antonio, Texas. At the time, his ex-girlfriend, who again, I think she may have been his ex-fiance, but the story says his ex-girlfriend accused him of a sustained and violent assault after he allegedly confronted her over suspicions of infidelity. And it is something that, what she was describing in terms of the whole sustained aspect of this is very similar to what Saraya was describing, as far as, her alleging that there were these prolonged periods of time that he would beat on her. But it says, according to police affidavit, she claimed that he slapped her repeatedly across the head. The allegations also included that he forced her to wear a dress and dance for him under threat that he would abandon her son in the middle of a road somewhere, or in the middle of the road somewhere, if she cried. Further details in the police affidavit allege that Rodriguez, which is Del Rio's real last name, bound the woman's hands with boxing straps, gagged her with a sock, and subjected her to hours of sexual assault, reportedly involving the use of various objects. He was also alleged to have punched her in the back. Officers noted that the woman displayed visible injuries, including bruises on her face, arms, legs, and neck, all of which were documented in photographs. Additionally, the accuser claimed Rodriguez destroyed her phone and laptop and attempted to set her passport on fire. Following an investigation, a grand jury indicted Rodriguez in October 2020 on 1 count of aggravated kidnapping and 4 counts of sexual assault. The trial was postponed several times, but was ultimately scheduled for December 2021. However, on December 10th, the Bexar County District Attorney's Office confirmed that all charges had been formally dropped due to the failure of a key prosecution witness, the accuser, to appear for a trial. As a result, the case could not proceed. He said, and this is Alberto now speaking later on about this, it was a situation between myself and my ex-fiancée. She later admitted to lying about the allegations because, quote, I wanted to hurt him. I wanted revenge, and that's what happened. Alberto admitted that he cheated on his fiancée 10 days before their wedding in their own bed. He said, you can call me a disgusting man, but I'm no rapist, and I never kidnapped anybody. Now, he is talking about how she admitted that she lied and she wanted to hurt him and stuff. I don't even know, to this day, I'm not even sure about the validity of those supposed comments from this woman, where they came from, if she was on social media and had her own account and posted it there, or if this was just Alberto and his family putting that out, because the whole thing is very suspect. And again, there was a police report. There was documented evidence that something happened to this woman. And was he convicted of a crime? No, because she was not available to testify, I guess, for the prosecution. And so it was very difficult then to put a trial on if the person making the accusations is not available, or is all of a sudden having a change of heart about this. This whole thing stunk to high holy hell, though, when I first read this. And the idea, like Hugh goes on there, oh, he's totally innocent. None of this stuff has ever been proven. He's totally innocent. Well, you know what? In the eyes of the justice system, sure, he wasn't convicted of a crime. But to believe that he's an innocent angel and that all of this stuff, to go even back to the Soraya stuff, that all of this stuff is just completely made up and manufactured. This is a man who has just been wronged each and every single time. He doesn't have a temper. He hasn't done any of this stuff before. I find it very hard to believe. So yeah, he's not in jail because you can't convict him on something if you don't either have the evidence or if the person that was going to speak about it is all of a sudden not willing to speak about it. But that doesn't mean that Alberto Del Rio is an innocent angel. That doesn't mean that there are companies that should not look at him with caution when it comes to potentially working with him and bringing him in, because there's a lot of baggage there, right? You can understand why a lot of these companies would have reservations about wanting to work with this man in the future. And those are not the only incidents he was involved in. I mean, earlier this year, he got into a physical altercation. It was at a AAA show, and he got into a physical altercation with fans in the crowd, and he got suspended for 6 months by the wrestling commission. So he can't wrestle. I think it's in Tijuana for 6 months. It's only in Tijuana. For 6 months, he can't even wrestle there. And I think that suspension may be coming up in a few months. So that was the latest incident with him. It was quiet for a while, but that was the latest incident with him. But Hiedra, at one point, that was one of the other names on this list, had a restraining order against her as part of Stephanie Vicare's case against Rogelio Reyes, her ex-boyfriend known in wrestling as Cuatrero, who is still awaiting trial. Cuatrero's brothers, Sanson and Forastero, are tag team champions and part of Alberto's top heel group. And the Stephanie Vicare thing is a whole other disturbing situation. But as far as Alberto Del Rio, when this news broke this week, I read it as, okay, either they're updating the AAA contracts and effectively converting them to WWE contracts for all the reasons that, Ernesto Ocampo mentioned. That the AAA contracts are shit. And WWE, if they're going to be owning this promotion, 51% of this promotion, they're going to want all of the performers under WWE-style contracts with all of the associated legal language. So that's not really a big surprise. And Meltzer says, well, Alberto did sign a new WWE deal. I just look at it as a formality. He's working for AAA. He's their top champion, right? He's their top star. So him not immediately being let go by AAA is not a shock, but the idea that people are freaking out because, WWE signed him. You would think the man is going to be on Monday Night Raw this week. He's not. I don't think he'll ever be on Monday Night Raw or SmackDown. That's not what this means. But right now, we don't know what we don't know. This is still a very fluid, developing thing. This deal is not even done. This deal could very well fall apart at the 11th hour. The transaction has not closed. It's like when we found out that TKO was going to, own WWE and UFC, right, under the same umbrella, right? And Endeavor was basically scooping up WWE. There are any number of things that could have gone wrong in the months that follow where that deal could have fallen apart. The deal didn't close until that September, I think. So there's a lot that could still happen between now and then. And until we get some more clarity on this is all just speculation and conjecture on exactly what Del Rio's role is going to be here. But him continuing on in AAA would have been expected. I don't know why people would be surprised about that, but this idea that, I can't believe WWE has signed Del Rio and they're going to bring him back. Like, I don't expect him to be back, right? You can't rule it out that he won't at some point appear on some kind of joint show, right, that happens to have NXT talent on it. If they're doing like a formally joint show like this Worlds Collide thing, who's to say for sure? But until we get some more clarity on this, it's not worth, speculating beyond what I've just talked about here, because people were making this into a bigger deal than I think it really is. But as far as the AAA stuff is concerned, they did announce that there's going to be a Triple Mania show coming up on June 15th. And as far as we know at this time, WWE is sending Angel and Berto to be on that show. And Meltzer says, fans hope for bigger names like Penta and Phoenix or Dragon Lee or Rey Mysterio, which would be tough unless he was just going to show up to just make an appearance because he just had surgery to repair his adductor muscle. But there's also rumors that maybe Joe Hendry and or the Hardys could be on that show. none of this is confirmed. So in the weeks ahead, we'll find out who will and will not be appearing on those shows. But the Alberto thing became a big story this week, and so I wanted to address that here.